The Titan's massive engines rumbled to life, their deep vibrations shaking the crew out of their cryosleep pods. The hum of the ship's internal systems whirred into existence, one by one, and the artificial gravity kicked in with a soft thud beneath their feet. Captain Alexander Grant's eyes fluttered open, his senses adjusting to the sterile white light of the bridge. Around him, the faces of his crew slowly came to life, blinking in confusion as they adjusted to the harsh reality of their surroundings. The crew had been in stasis for more than 5 years. The journey through the stars had been a long one, endless and silent. But now, with the Titan's return to the known universe, that silence was shattered. "Report," Grant barked, his voice steady but thick with the weight of the unknown. He rose from his command chair, the creaking of his joints betraying the years of slumber. Lieutenant Sophia Nash, the ship's chief pilot, was already at her station. Her fingers moved with practiced precision, bringing up the star charts, the fleet status, and most importantly, the incoming message that had shaken the entire fleet awake. "Captain, we've received a distress signal," she said, voice tight. "It's from Earth." Grant felt a pang of unease shoot through him. They had been out of contact with home for far too long, and the idea of receiving a distress signal from Earth after all this time was unsettling. "Put it through." The communication screen flickered to life, revealing the senior officer, Admiral Miriam Ho. Her face was haggard, worn, and her eyes held an expression Grant would never forget. Desperation. "Captain Grant, if you're receiving this, Earth is under attack." The Admiral's voice crackled through the speakers, as though even her transmission was being strained by the enemy's presence. "We've detected an alien fleet, vast, incomprehensible. They've already wiped out several nearby colonies. We believe them to be the Drazathi. They've returned." A cold shiver ran down Grant's spine. The Drazathi. The name alone carried the weight of 1,000 nightmares, an ancient enemy thought to have been eradicated after humanity's first desperate wars. They were ruthless conquerors, and they left nothing but dead worlds in their wake. Their return meant something humanity couldn't even fathom: extinction. "Admiral, give us your coordinates," Grant ordered, his voice taking on a hard edge. The sound of his command filled the bridge, forcing the crew to focus. "We'll get there as fast as we can." A long pause. "I don't think you understand, Captain," the Admiral said, her voice breaking. "We're already too late. The Drazathi have already breached the Sol system's outer defenses. We need help." The screen fizzled out as the transmission cut off, leaving a heavy silence in its wake. Grant stood frozen for a moment, his mind racing. Earth, the cradle of humanity, was already under siege, and their chances of reaching it in time felt increasingly slim. Yet it wasn't just Earth's survival that weighed heavily on his mind. It was what this attack meant. The Drazathi were back, and they weren't here for peace. "Status of the fleet?" he asked, turning to Commander Leo Dempsey, his second in command. "Fleet's in position, sir. We're fully operational." But Dempsey hesitated. "The burning void is ahead. It's an uncharted region filled with anomalies. If we push through it, we risk everything. We're not sure we'll make it to Earth alive." Grant's mind raced. The burning void was notorious, a region of space so dangerous that even the most advanced ships had turned back in fear. It was a labyrinth of cosmic storms, radiation fields, and time distortions that could tear apart a fleet in moments. But Earth didn't have time to wait. "We don't have a choice," Grant said with quiet certainty. "Set course for the void. Full speed." Nash nodded, already working the controls. "Aye, sir. We'll hit the edge of the void in 3 hours." The crew moved swiftly, the tension palpable. Everyone knew that this was more than just a mission. It was humanity's last stand. If they could break through the void, if they could reach Earth, there might still be a chance to fight back. But the odds were impossibly steep, and every moment felt like they were racing against a clock that could explode at any moment. Grant walked over to the viewport, looking out into the endless black. Ahead of them, the void stretched like a dark ocean, a boundary to be crossed. But what waited on the other side was more terrifying than anything they had encountered before. In the distance, he could already see the first flashes of cosmic storms illuminating the darkness. The Titan would march through this hell, and it would either come out victorious or be consumed. "Captain," Nash's voice interrupted his thoughts. "We've got another signal. It's coming from the void." Grant's heart skipped. "A distress signal?" "No," she said, her voice hard. "It's not a distress signal. It's a warning." The eerie hum of the Titan's engines filled the bridge, a low growl of power beneath the tense silence. Captain Grant's gaze never wavered from the massive, swirling darkness of the burning void ahead of them. This was the border of the unknown, a chasm between what humanity had conquered and the untold dangers that lay beyond. For all its size and firepower, the Titan felt like a fragile insect in the face of that cosmic abyss. "Captain, the void is ahead." Lieutenant Nash's voice broke the silence. Her fingers hovered over the controls, watching the instruments flicker with static interference. "We're entering the edge. The anomalies are starting to show up on the scanners." Grant stepped forward, squinting at the screen. The void didn't just look like an empty space. It was alive, shifting, twisting in ways no human had ever experienced. It was a place where reality itself seemed to fray at the edges. The first ripple of cosmic energy grazed their shields, sending a violent shudder through the ship. "Steady, Nash," Grant ordered. His mind was already calculating the dangers, the hundreds of ways they could be ripped apart by the space they were entering. "Set a course straight through. Full speed." "Aye, sir." Nash gritted her teeth, her eyes narrowing as she punched in the coordinates. The ship lurched as the engines roared to life, the Titan pushing its massive hull forward, slicing through the dense, pulsing field of energy. The darkness of the void seemed to close in around them, a suffocating force. As they crossed the threshold, the first wave of electromagnetic storms struck. The lights on the bridge flickered wildly, and the temperature spiked for a brief moment before stabilizing again. Then came the eerie silence, as though the void itself was holding its breath. "Captain," Commander Dempsey called, his voice tight. "The scanners are barely functioning. It's like the anomalies are scrambling everything. Our communications are going haywire." Grant's eyes shifted to the red blinking lights indicating failure across multiple systems. The Titan had been built to withstand almost anything, but the void was a different beast. No technology was truly prepared for this place. "Can we still track the fleet?" "Negative," Dempsey replied. "We've lost contact with the rest of the fleet. They're scattered and heading into different sectors." Grant's jaw clenched. The fleet was already breaking apart, scattered into the turbulent forces of the void. They were going to be alone out here, alone against the Drazathi. "Keep moving," Grant said, his voice low but commanding. "We can't afford to turn back now." Suddenly, a piercing shriek of static filled the bridge, and Nash flinched, her hands shaking. "Captain, another signal. It's coming from deep inside the void." Grant's pulse quickened, a signal in the heart of this chaotic storm. It was impossible. Nobody could survive this far in, let alone send a transmission. "Put it through," he ordered, his voice sharp. The screen flickered, and a distorted, static-filled image appeared. At first, there was nothing but a blurry figure. Then the signal cleared for a brief moment, revealing an unfamiliar face, a man in a damaged uniform, his eyes wide with panic. "Warning," the man's voice crackled, the transmission warping as his image faded in and out. "You have to turn back. The Drazathi. Oh God, they're here. They found us. The ship's gone. You can't escape them. It's too late." The transmission cut out abruptly, leaving nothing but the shrill hiss of static behind. Silence descended on the bridge, thick and suffocating. The man's warning echoed in Grant's mind. The Drazathi were already in the void, waiting. "Did you get that?" Grant asked, his voice low. "Yes, sir." Nash's hands were tense on the controls, her face pale. Whoever that was, they were in the heart of the void. The Drazathi must have already pushed through. We're not the only ones here. Grant's mind raced. The Drazathi were not only waiting for them, they had already infiltrated the void. This was no longer a race against time. This was a trap. "Set a course to intercept that signal," he said, his voice unwavering despite the growing panic in his chest. "If they made it this far, there might be something we can use. We're not turning back until we know exactly what we're up against." Nash's fingers hesitated over the controls, the danger of what they were about to do hanging in the air. "Are you sure about this, sir? We don't even know what's out there." "We don't have a choice. We need to know what we're facing," Grant replied, his expression hardening. "We don't just fight the Drazathi. We need to know why they're here and what their next move is. If we can't get to Earth, then we'll strike wherever we can." Nash nodded and adjusted their course. The Titan groaned as it shifted direction, plunging deeper into the heart of the void, toward the unknown. As they ventured further into the chaos, the very fabric of space seemed to stretch and warp. Shadows flickered just outside their range of vision, unnatural shapes moving in the periphery. Grant knew they were being watched, and as the crew moved forward, the ominous feeling of something lurking just beyond their reach settled over them all. Whatever awaited them in the heart of the void, it was not going to be easy. But Grant had made a promise to his crew, and to humanity, that they would fight until the end. And this was only the beginning. The Titan plunged deeper into the heart of the burning void. The once pristine bridge now bathed in the harsh glow of warning lights. The ship creaked and groaned as the gravitational distortions in the void tugged at its very structure. The sense of unease among the crew was palpable, and Captain Grant could feel it like a pressure in his chest. Every moment they spent in the void seemed to stretch time itself. They weren't just facing the unknown. They were being swallowed by it. Nash's voice broke the tense silence. "We're getting close to the source of that transmission, Captain. But there's something off. I'm picking up energy readings from all around us. It's not just the void. It's something else. A ship, maybe. Something is moving in and out of our sensors." Grant's eyes narrowed. They had been tracking the signal, but the deeper they went into the void, the harder it became to make sense of their surroundings. Reality seemed to ripple around them. Stars flickered in and out of existence like ghosts, and gravitational anomalies tugged at the ship from all directions. "Stay on course," Grant said, his voice calm but firm. He turned to Dempsey. "What's the status of the fleet?" Dempsey's face was grim as he scanned the comms and the fleet's movement. "It's chaos, Captain. The fleet is scattered. The Titan is the only one in range of the signal. We've lost contact with the rest, and they're either too far to help or they've already been lost to the void." Grant finished, his words heavy with dread. The prospect of facing the Drazathi with only the Titan was unthinkable. Yet, the crew had no choice but to push forward. Just then, a loud crack echoed throughout the ship. Sparks flew from one of the control panels, and the lights flickered. A wave of panic swept through the crew as the power flickered again, this time threatening to drop them into darkness. "Shields at 70%, Captain," Nash reported quickly. "There's an energy burst coming from an unknown source. We're being pulled in." Grant's pulse quickened. The Titan had been designed to withstand intense gravitational forces, but nothing in their training prepared them for this. Not just the void, but something else. Something active, something intelligent. "The Drazathi. Brace for impact," Grant shouted. Before anyone could respond, the Titan was rocked by a sudden violent force. The ship lurched sideways, sending the crew stumbling. Sparks flew across the bridge and alarms blared. A massive pulse of energy hit them like a shockwave, rattling every system to its core. For a moment, It felt as though the Titan was being pulled apart. "Sir, the engines are fluctuating," Nash cried out, fighting to maintain control. "We're being dragged towards something massive. Whatever it is, it's not giving us a choice. We're locked onto something." Grant held onto his chair as the Titan shuddered again, this time with a horrible metallic groan. The tension in the air was suffocating, the very walls of the ship vibrating with a strange resonance that wasn't natural. Whatever was out there in the void wasn't merely waiting for them, it was calling to them. "We're going in," Grant said, his voice low, determined. "Nash, keep the ship steady. Dempsey, get a damage report. Whatever's out there, we're going to find it." But as the Titan was pulled deeper into the anomaly, an eerie new sensation filled the bridge. A shadow moving at the edge of their sensors. Something was approaching, something fast. "I'm picking up multiple signatures," Nash reported, her voice tense. "Not just one ship. It's a fleet, Captain. A Drazathi fleet." Grant's heart skipped a beat. There was no mistaking the feeling of dread that filled him. They were in the Drazathi's domain now, and they knew it. "Plot an evasive course," Grant ordered immediately. "Get us out of their sensor range. They can't know we're here." But it was too late. The first Drazathi ship emerged from the shadows, massive, sleek, and deadly. Its biomechanical structure shimmered with an unnatural sheen, as though the ship itself was a living organism. The ship's hull rippled as energy coursed across it, and a deep, guttural hum vibrated through the Titan's hull, as if the Drazathi ship was alive. "I've never seen anything like it," Dempsey muttered, his eyes wide with disbelief. "It's huge, and it's heading straight for us." Grant knew they didn't have the luxury of avoiding a confrontation. They were already inside Drazathi space, and retreat was impossible. "Prepare for battle," Grant commanded, his voice firm. "We're not running. We fight. Nash, bring us around. Get us into firing position. Dempsey, activate all point defense systems. We're not letting them take us without a fight." The Titan's engines roared as Nash spun the ship around with precise control. The Drazathi ship loomed larger on the view screen, its deadly silhouette growing with every second. Suddenly, a massive energy pulse erupted from the Drazathi ship, streaking across the darkness of the void. The beam hit the Titan's shields with a bone-rattling impact, sending shockwaves through the entire ship. The force of the blast sent the crew stumbling, and a few of the consoles exploded in a shower of sparks. "Shields at 40%, Captain," Nash shouted. "We can't take many more hits like that." Grant gritted his teeth. The Titan was built for this, built to survive. But the Drazathi weren't like any enemy they had ever faced. They were fast, brutal, and merciless. The battle had begun. The Titan was rocked again as another pulse from the Drazathi ship tore into its shields. Sparks exploded from the control panels, and the entire ship shuddered as the hull groaned under the strain. Grant's knuckles whitened around the armrest of his chair. The ship's systems were failing faster than they could compensate, and they were deep within the heart of enemy space, surrounded by the void's distortions. "Status report," Grant barked, his voice harsh against the screeching alarms. "Shields at 15%, Captain." Nash's voice came through tightly. "We're losing power. The energy pulses from that Drazathi ship are too much. We can't take another hit like that. Get us out of their range, Nash." Grant snapped. His eyes never left the view screen, where the massive silhouette of the Drazathi vessel loomed. It was vast, its dark surface covered in biomechanical appendages that shifted and pulsed like an organic entity. The ship felt alive. Alive in a way no human-made vessel ever could. Nash worked the controls furiously, but the ship's systems were beginning to fail under the onslaught. "We're caught in a gravitational distortion. I can't pull away," she yelled, frustration building in her voice. Dempsey's voice cut through the chaos. "There's more of them. We've got at least 5 Drazathi ships closing in from all directions. They're using the void's anomalies to phase in and out. We won't be able to outrun them." Grant's heart sank as the full weight of their situation hit him. The Titan was outmatched, and even their advanced technology couldn't counter the Drazathi's ability to manipulate space itself. Every calculation, every maneuver felt like it was drawing them closer to their doom. "Captain," Nash's voice cracked. "Another ship. It's coming out of the distortion. It's on an intercept course." Grant's eyes snapped to the screen, where a second, smaller Drazathi vessel materialized, its sleek design glistening as it glided toward them with terrifying speed. It was armed with weapons that could disable a fleet in seconds. The Titan was already crippled, and now they had no choice but to engage. "Prepare to return fire," Grant commanded. His voice was a mask of calm, but inside, he could feel the suffocating pressure of the situation. This could very well be the end. Nash slapped the controls, targeting the smaller Drazathi ship. The Titan's point defense systems hummed to life, its weapons swiveling to lock on. "Firing in 3, 2, 1. Nash shouted, and the Titan unleashed a volley of high-energy laser blasts. The beams streaked through the void, striking the smaller Drazathi ship with pinpoint accuracy. The enemy vessel staggered, its shields flaring with intense light as it absorbed the energy. The Drazathi ship retaliated almost instantly, unleashing a concentrated beam of energy that crashed into the Titan's already failing shields. The impact sent a shockwave through the ship, rattling everyone aboard. "Shields down to 5%. We can't take another hit," Nash cried, her voice shaking. "We need to do something now," Dempsey roared, his eyes frantic. "We'll be sitting ducks out here. The Drazathi are toying with us." Grant stood, pacing in tight circles as the crew continued to work in overdrive, fighting to keep the Titan operational. His mind raced. They needed to break free, but every direction they attempted led them further into the web the Drazathi had set. "There has to be something we can do," Grant muttered to himself, more as a prayer than a command. The ship groaned as another shot collided with its hull, shaking them all. He glanced at the main view screen again. The Drazathi fleet was closing in, their weapons primed and ready. They were out of time. And then it hit him, an idea, bold and dangerous. "Switch to manual controls," Grant ordered. "Nash, I want you to take us directly into that Drazathi ship's flight path. We're going to draw them into one of the void's anomalies." Nash's eyes widened. "Captain, that's insane. We'll be caught in the anomaly too." "We won't," Grant said, his voice steely with resolve. "The void doesn't just tear things apart. It distorts reality. We can use that. If we get them to follow us into a particular anomaly, we might be able to disorient their ships long enough to break free." "But, sir, the risk," Dempsey began. "We don't have a choice," Grant interrupted, his voice cutting through the hesitation. "We'll be a sitting target otherwise." Nash swallowed hard, then nodded. She didn't need to be told again. With a quick flick of her wrist, she redirected the Titan's course toward a swirling distortion, a massive, violent rift in space that seemed to pulse with an ominous energy. "Hold on," Nash yelled as she pushed the ship forward, accelerating with all the power the Titan had left. The gravitational field around them shifted, and the Titan's hull groaned as the ship was pulled toward the rift. The Drazathi ships, seeing their prey trying to escape into the anomaly, followed with relentless precision. They were closing in fast. "Now," Grant ordered, his pulse racing. "Take us in." With a final burst of speed, the Titan plunged into the rift, the surrounding space twisting and warping around them. The Drazathi ships followed, but as they entered the rift, their sensors began to glitch and flicker. Their ships faltered, disoriented by the distortion. The Titan pushed forward through the chaotic waves of space, every second feeling like a struggle for survival. But in that brief window, they had created the chance they needed. The battle wasn't over yet, but for the first time in what felt like an eternity, Grant had hope. For now, they had escaped. But the Titan's fight was far from finished. The rift that had swallowed the Titan was a wild and violent place. The very fabric of space seemed to stretch and ripple, warping the ship in ways it was never meant to endure. The crew struggled to maintain their footing as the ship was tossed about by unseen forces. The lights flickered, the engines hummed erratically, and the hull creaked as if it were being pulled apart. Status report. Captain Grant's voice cut through the chaos, his hands gripping the console tightly as he fought to maintain control. "We've entered the anomaly's core," Nash shouted over the cacophony of alarms. "Sensors are completely scrambled. I can't get a fix on anything. We're blind in here, Captain." The Titan lurched again, a violent shudder running through the entire ship. The crew braced themselves as the distortion grew stronger, the very nature of space twisting in ways that made their stomachs churn. "Damn it, Nash." Grant's voice was tense. "We need to get out of here before the Drazathi lock onto us again. Can you get us through this?" "I'm trying," Nash cried, her hands flying across the controls. "But this place, it's like the void is fighting us. It's alive." The ship's instruments flickered, and for a moment, the view screen displayed nothing but pure blackness, the star-filled sky nothing more than an empty void. Then, as if they were moving in and out of reality itself, the ship's sensors caught something. A strange distortion. A blip. "It's them," Dempsey muttered, his voice low and dangerous. "The Drazathi are right behind us. They've entered the rift, and they're closing in fast." Grant's stomach twisted. They hadn't escaped. Not by much. The Drazathi had followed them into the anomaly, their ships warping and phasing with terrifying precision. Whatever advantage they had gained was slipping away by the second. "We can't outrun them," Grant said. "They're too fast, too adaptable." "Then we fight," Nash responded, her voice hardening with determination. Grant turned toward her, meeting her gaze with a grim smile. "Get us out of this rift. We need a tactical advantage. If we're going to take them down, we'll need to outsmart them." "Understood," Nash said, her expression focused. She set her jaw and began adjusting the course, steering the Titan through the shifting maze of distortions. The ship bucked and swayed again, as though some invisible force was dragging them off course, but Nash held firm. She pushed the engines to their limits, navigating the ship with a precision that only came from years of experience. Suddenly, the rift's gravity reached its peak, and the Titan was thrown into a wild spin. The crew scrambled to hold their positions as the ship tumbled in space, every system aboard screaming in protest. Warning lights flashed in a frantic dance across the bridge. "Captain, we're losing power," Nash shouted, her face pale as she struggled to regain control. "The rift's effects are too much. We can't maintain stability at this speed." "Shut down the unnecessary systems," Grant barked. "Keep us alive, Nash. We're not going to let this thing swallow us." The Titan groaned as Nash pushed through the chaos, shutting down non-essential systems and focusing all remaining power on stabilizing the ship's momentum. Slowly, the violent spinning began to subside, but they were still deep within the rift, surrounded by the overwhelming force of the void's anomalies. "We can't stay in here long," Dempsey said, his voice tight with urgency. "Not only are the Drazathi right behind us, but the anomalies pushing us toward the center. If we don't get out soon, we'll be sucked in beyond any hope of escape." Grant took a deep breath, his mind racing. This was it. Their options were dwindling, and the pressure was building with each passing second. "Get us to the core of the anomaly," Grant said, his voice resolute. "We're going to use it against them. We can't escape the Drazathi, but if we can disrupt their sensors, their targeting systems will go haywire. We're going to turn this place into a weapon." Nash blinked at him, clearly startled by the plan. "You want to use the rift to fight them?" Grant's eyes narrowed. "Exactly. The rift is a distortion of space. It's chaos, and they can't see it like we can. We're going to draw them in, and when they're close enough, we'll disable their ships." But we'll be right in the middle of it, Nash protested. I know, Grant said quietly, his expression unwavering. But this is our only shot. We'll use the rift as cover, then hit them hard. Focus everything on disorienting their navigation systems. Make them panic. The crew fell silent for a moment, each member absorbing the weight of Grant's plan. It was risky, beyond risky, but it was the only choice they had left. Set the course, Grant ordered. Prepare for a full velocity strike. We move on my mark. Nash, still processing the plan, nodded. Aye, Captain. I'll make it happen. The Titan surged forward, the ship's engines thrumming with renewed power. The rift around them twisted and pulsed, distorting the stars and the very air itself. The Drazathi ships were closing in fast, but they were not prepared for the chaos that awaited them. Mark, Grant said. Now. Nash yanked the controls, sending the Titan rocketing toward the heart of the anomaly, drawing the Drazathi fleet with them. A final gambit, one last play for survival. As the ship sped deeper into the rift, the distorted space enveloped them. The Titan seemed to fold in on itself as they passed through the rift's center, throwing off shockwaves of energy and gravity that sent the Drazathi ships into disarray. It was now or never. The time had come to turn the tables. The Titan streaked through the heart of the rift, its hull shaking violently as the very fabric of space warped around them. The rift was a place of pure chaos, a violent storm where every law of physics seemed to bend and break. The ship's systems were barely holding together, the power surging and flickering as if they too were struggling to survive. The sound of metal groaning under strain reverberated through the corridors, adding to the feeling that they were on the edge of collapse. Shields at critical levels, Nash shouted, her voice taut with stress as she gripped the controls. We've already passed the point of no return. Any closer to the center, and we won't make it out. Just keep us on course, Grant commanded, his voice as steady as he could manage. He was acutely aware of the danger, but panic would do nothing now. They had to trust the plan. It was their only chance. Behind them, the Drazathi fleet was following, their ships moving through the rift with uncanny precision, despite the disorienting effects of the anomaly. But they weren't as adapted to the distortions as the Titan. The rift was a mystery to them, and every second they spent trying to adjust their navigational systems was another second in which they could be thrown off course. Grant could see it on the view screen, the Drazathi ships flickering, their movements erratic. They were getting closer, but they weren't as coordinated as they had been outside the rift. The Titan's advantage in the chaos of the void was beginning to show. They're faltering, Dempsey shouted, his eyes wide with realization. They can't keep up with the rift's fluctuations. They're too heavily reliant on their sensors. Good, Grant muttered. Keep the pressure on. We've got to get them right where we want them. Sir, we're getting some strange readings, Nash said, her brow furrowed in concentration. There's a massive energy source up ahead. Something ancient. Grant's heart skipped a beat. The rift was already a strange and dangerous place, but now something else was adding to the confusion. A presence, an energy unlike anything he had ever encountered. What do you mean, ancient? Grant asked, his voice sharp. I'm not sure, Nash replied, her fingers dancing over the console. But it's massive, and it's radiating heat. It's almost like something dormant is waking up. Grant's instincts flared. We're not here to find new enemies, Nash. Focus on the fleet. We can't afford distractions. Got it, she said, though her eyes lingered on the strange readings. There was an undeniable tension in the air, something otherworldly and unsettling. But there was no time for speculation. The Drazathi were still closing in. The Titan surged forward, narrowly dodging a pulse of energy fired by the Drazathi fleet. The shockwave reverberated through the rift, shaking the ship and sending another round of alarms blaring across the bridge. They're firing at will now, Nash reported, her voice tight. They're getting desperate. Good, Grant replied. "They're losing their precision. They'll panic soon." Dempsey's voice cut in, his tone more urgent than before. "Captain, the anomaly's gravitational pull is increasing. We're almost at the center. We don't have much time to set up our strike." Grant nodded, his mind already working through the next steps. They were running out of options, and every move had to count. "Nash, get us close enough to the Drazathi flagship to disable its engines. Once we're within range, I want all available firepower focused on their propulsion systems. We'll slow them down and force them into the center of the rift, where their ships can't maintain control." Nash nodded grimly, her hands steady despite the turmoil around them. "I'm on it, Captain." The Titan rocketed forward, its engines groaning as they pushed the ship to its limits. Every inch closer to the Drazathi flagship was another chance for the enemy to launch an attack, but it was the only way. The Drazathi were ruthless, but they were not used to fighting in this kind of environment. They relied too much on their advanced technology, too little on the instincts that had kept humanity alive. The Drazathi flagship loomed larger in the view screen, a vast and terrifying presence, its sleek biometallic hull shimmering with unnatural energy. It was a perfect target, a massive centralized point in the fleet. The Titan had to break through its defenses to reach the core of their command structure. "Ready, Captain," Nash said, her voice a whisper of determination. "Now," Grant ordered. Nash flipped a switch, and the Titan's weapon systems roared to life. A volley of high-powered missiles screamed through the rift, striking the Drazathi flagship's shields with devastating force. The impact caused a violent reaction, the ship's hull groaning as its defense systems scrambled to compensate. The Drazathi flagship returned fire, but its aim was off. The gravitational distortion of the rift threw off its targeting systems, and the shot missed by a wide margin. Grant's lips twisted into a grim smile. Now they're panicking. Nash pushed the Titan forward, closing the distance. "We've got them, Captain. The flagship's engine core is exposed. I can hit it with a concentrated blast from the main cannon." "Do it," Grant said. Now, the Titan's main guns locked onto the flagship's engine core, and Nash fired with deadly precision. The blast tore through the flagship's defenses, hitting the engine directly. The explosion was magnificent. Fire, energy, and debris scattered across the void as the Drazathi flagship's power systems failed. "Direct hit," Nash shouted triumphantly. "Their engines are crippled. They're dead in the water." But as the flagship fell into disarray, the remaining Drazathi ships were not ready to give up. They were furious now, and they were closing in, even faster than before. The Titan had delivered its blow, but the battle was far from over. The rift was still shifting, and the enemy fleet was regrouping. Now it was time for the crew to make their final move, before they were swallowed by the void or destroyed by the Drazathi. The chaos of the rift had become a living, breathing entity. Space twisted and warped around the Titan, and the disorienting pull of gravity threatened to tear the ship apart. Despite their recent victory against the Drazathi flagship, the fight was far from over. The remaining Drazathi ships, now desperate and more erratic, were closing in with renewed fury. Their sensors were still scrambled, but they were quick to adapt, relentless in their pursuit. "Captain, they're regrouping," Dempsey said, his voice filled with urgency. "They're coming at us from all sides. They're using the rift's anomalies to avoid our fire." Grant's jaw tightened as he watched the view screen, where the Drazathi ships were flickering in and out of visibility. The rift had thrown their initial advantage into chaos, and now the enemy was using that same instability to their benefit. The Titan was still damaged, its weapons and shields barely functional, and the Drazathi had more ships, more firepower. "How long until we're out of here?" Grant asked Nash, though he already knew the answer. They were deep within the rift now, past the point of no return. Nash's face was drawn, her eyes locked on the control panel. "The gravitational anomalies are pulling us toward the center faster than I anticipated. If we don't act now, we'll be crushed or lost in the rift's core. Grant took a deep breath. The stakes had never been higher. There was no retreat left, no second chance. They were going to have to make their stand here, in the heart of the anomaly. It was all or nothing. "We've got to take them out, quickly," Grant said, his voice hardening. "Dempsey, Nash, we need to draw them in. We can't let them get the upper hand again." Dempsey nodded, his expression grim. "I'm with you, Captain. But what's the plan?" Grant turned to face the view screen again, his mind working furiously. The center of the rift, the heart of the distortion, was their only hope. If they could get close enough, they could trigger a reaction, something that would destabilize the rift even further. It was a dangerous gamble, but it was their only shot. The Drazethi, despite their advanced technology, were still playing catch-up in this chaotic environment. "The core of the rift is unstable," Grant said slowly, as though testing the idea aloud. "If we can trigger a chain reaction there, we can collapse the anomaly from the inside out. It will cause a massive shockwave, enough to scatter the Drazethi fleet." "But Captain, the shockwave," Nash began, her voice hesitant. "It'll hit us too. We'll be caught in it." "I know," Grant said, cutting her off. "But the Drazethi won't expect us to take such a risk. We have to force their hand. Get them close enough, then let the rift's energy do the rest. We won't have time to escape, but we can use that explosion to cripple their fleet. It's our only way out." For a moment, there was silence on the bridge. The weight of the decision hung in the air, and the crew shared a glance, each of them knowing the cost of what they were about to do. It was a sacrifice they might not survive, but the alternative was certain death. Dempsey was the first to break the silence. "It's a long shot, but it's the best we got." "We're with you, Captain." Nash nodded resolutely. "Let's do it." Grant turned back to the view screen, watching as the Drazethi ships continued to close in. They were methodical now, less frantic, their movements synchronized as they hunted the Titan. They had learned from their previous mistakes, and they were determined to finish what they had started. "Take us into the center of the rift," Grant ordered. "We'll lead them in. All weapons, fire at will. We need to make them follow." Nash's hands flew across the console, and the Titan lurched forward, its engines barely maintaining enough power to keep the ship on course. The Drazethi ships began to chase them, firing shots that crackled and fizzled in the unstable space around them. Their aim was erratic, but with the rift's gravitational forces working against them, it didn't matter. Every hit sent the Titan's hull groaning, sparks flying from the control panels, but the ship held together. "Brace for impact," Nash yelled, her voice strained. Another Drazethi shot struck the Titan, sending a violent shockwave through the ship. Alarms screamed, and the crew was thrown against their harnesses as the Titan twisted and bucked. The rift's core was closer now, pulsing with raw, chaotic energy. The ship was nearly at the threshold. "Get us in, now," Grant shouted. Nash slammed the controls forward, pushing the ship into the very heart of the rift. The distortion was unbearable, the energy suffocating. Time seemed to warp around them. Seconds stretched into eternity as the Titan surged toward the epicenter of the anomaly. The Drazethi fleet followed, firing relentlessly. The Titan was almost caught in the fire, but just as it reached the rift's core, Grant gave the order. "Now, Nash, trigger the core." Nash's fingers slammed down on the final control. A blinding flash of light erupted from the center of the rift as the core destabilized. The rift reacted, its energy cascading outward in an explosive wave, tearing apart everything in its path. The Titan was hurled backward, caught in the shockwave as the very fabric of space began to collapse. The Drazethi ships were caught in the blast as well. Their formations shattered, their hulls rupturing as the rift's power consumed them. The massive wave of energy surged outward, pushing the remaining ships into disarray. The Titan was battered, torn, but still alive. And as the shockwave subsided, Grant allowed himself a single breath. It wasn't over yet, but they had won a battle against the void itself. The crew had made their final gambit. The Titan lurched violently, throwing the crew against their harnesses as the shockwave from the rift's core tore through space. The ship groaned under the strain, every system wailing in protest. Sparks flew from consoles, and alarms blared in a chaotic symphony, but through it all, the Titan remained intact. Barely. Grant's breath came in shallow bursts as he fought to keep his grip on the captain's chair. His mind raced, every muscle tense, expecting the worst, another strike, another fatal blow. But nothing came. The rift's violent pulse had consumed the Drazathi fleet, scattering their ships into the void. Silence fell, broken only by the low hum of the ship's struggling systems. "Status report," Grant commanded, his voice hoarse, his body shaking from the adrenaline. Nash was the first to respond. She looked drained but determined, her fingers still flying across the controls as the ship's systems began to stabilize. "We're still alive, Captain. We've survived the worst of it." The rift's core collapsed in on itself. The shockwave was enough to cripple the Drazathi fleet. There's nothing left of them. Grant allowed himself a moment's relief, though it was brief. The Titan had made it through, against all odds, but the rift's aftermath left them in uncharted territory. They were far from any known systems, surrounded by nothing but the dark void of space. "And the rift?" Grant asked, glancing at the view screen. The heart of the anomaly was gone now, a swirling mass of unstable energy that continued to flicker at the edges of the screen. The rift had closed, but its damage lingered. The landscape around them was fractured, broken, and disorienting. "We're in the clear, sir," Nash replied, her voice tinged with exhaustion. "At least for now. But the damage to the rift is catastrophic. It could take years for anything to stabilize." "We won," Dempsey said, his voice filled with awe as he surveyed the bridge. "We actually did it." Grant nodded, though his mind was already on what came next. "We're not out of the woods yet. We're still in deep space, and we're running low on fuel and supplies. The crew's been through hell, but we have to keep going." "We have no other choice," Nash said quietly, meeting Grant's eyes. "We've survived the impossible, but we'll need all our strength to get home." The weight of the words hung in the air. They had defeated the Drazathi fleet, stopped the invasion, and emerged from the rift with nothing but the ship and each other. Yet the battle was far from over. The Titan was damaged, severely, and they were stranded, cut off from civilization, floating in the cold, empty expanse of space. "We'll make it back," Grant said, his voice firm, his resolve unwavering. "We've faced worse than this. And we're human. We don't quit." "Where do we go from here?" Nash asked, her fingers still hovering over the console as she searched for any signs of civilization. But there was nothing, just the vast, endless emptiness. "We'll head for the nearest star system," Grant replied. "There has to be something. A colony, a station, anything." Dempsey shook his head. "But Captain, the rift, we've never encountered anything like it. And now that it's closed, we have no way of knowing if any other ships are out here. We might be the only ones left." "We're not the only ones," Grant said, his voice tinged with certainty. "We're human. We don't fight just for ourselves. We fight for everyone. We'll find a way home. We always do." Nash's expression softened slightly, the burden of the mission settling on her shoulders. "You're right. The universe might have tried to swallow us whole, but we're still here." Grant took a deep breath, scanning the bridge. The crew had given everything, and now it was his turn to lead them through the unknown. "Patch into the communications array," Grant ordered. "Let's see if we can get a signal out. We're going to tell the world what happened. Humanity just stopped an invasion and survived the rift. That's something worth broadcasting." Nash worked quickly, her fingers dancing over the controls. After a few moments, she shook her head. No luck, sir. The rift's interference is still too strong. But it's only temporary. We'll find a way to get through. Then we wait, Grant said, turning to look out at the expanse of space. We wait, and we survive. We've done the impossible before. We'll do it again. As the crew fell silent, each of them lost in their thoughts, the Titan drifted through the empty void. It was a fragile victory, but it was theirs. The Drazathi were gone, the rift was closed, and humanity had once again defied the odds. And in the dark silence of space, the Titan's march continued. For as long as it took, as far as they had to go, they would keep moving. Humanity had proved itself once again, against the void, against the Drazathi, and against everything that tried to break them. They would find their way home. And the universe would never forget the cost of underestimating humanity.